If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, there is a strong chance that you yourself might also be emotionally unavailable. Now, I say this with as much love as anyone possibly can from someone who was emotionally unavailable for over 10 years and thought that it was actually other people's fault and not mine. Now, if you believe that like attracts like, the energy of those emotionally unavailable people you're drawing into your field are matching up with some specific wounds that might not look exactly like theirs, but they fit in really well with yours. This is a hard pill to swallow, this video. I'm not accusing you of anything. Please take this with a grain of salt. But if you're really serious about your healing journey and getting honest with yourself, make sure you watch to the end, because I will give you steps to heal your own emotional unavailability. Now, if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Amy, and I help women who are stuck in patterns of self-abandonment that keep attracting them toxic relationships to heal their trauma and learn the discipline of self-love so they can be free to be their authentic, true self. And if you'd like more content on this topic, please click the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell so you get notified when I post new lessons every week. Before I begin, Heal Your Heart School is open for enrollment, so if you'd like to know more about how to apply for that, stick around to the end. I want to start off by sharing my own story, because really I thought that everyone else and all my ex-partners were the problem for the longest time, and I really didn't understand how these subtle ways of emotional unavailability in myself were showing up and sabotaging my relationships. So I've never felt that comfortable in my past opening up and being really truthful and honest in my relationships, even in my friendships. And I had a very kind of isolated childhood. I was very reserved in my childhood, and I felt a bit unsafe to actually share with anyone else. I was kind of used to doing things on my own, right? Friendships and relationships, and this was kind of the climate in my family of origin as well. And I felt more comfortable with people who were more like me, right? They didn't share too much, they were a bit more reserved, held back, and I actually kind of liked the chase, right? Those ones that are more emotionally unavailable as well. That was actually where I felt safest, because it was a familiar feeling to me. And it also was a climate where I wasn't going to be challenged. I wasn't going to be asked to open up, right? I didn't have to show the parts of myself that I felt shame for. I didn't even realize I felt shame for those parts, but I was kind of protecting parts of me, and I didn't have to address any of that. And so I naturally attracted relationships like that, and I kind of kept this mask on. I played it safe, and I was able to kind of control the way I showed up as well. I say this in hindsight because at the time I thought this was perfectly normal to kind of like not always show all of yourself and to kind of like act in a certain way in relationships, but there's actually a pattern of performing for love, right? Appearing successful together and actually appearing in love, even if I wasn't feeling those feelings so much. The love that I was showing was actually quite superficial as well. I didn't actually really know what deep, healthy, intimate love was because I'd never experienced it before. And that relationship was more like ticking a box, right? It was like an acquisition, like a trophy, rather than something that I felt deeply committed to and co-creating with my partner. But of course, I couldn't keep it up, right? I'd have this other side where I would snap easily, or get really frustrated, or get anxious, or overwhelmed, or shut down, or overtired, because it's so exhausting masking up in this way and putting on this kind of false self in order to protect the parts of you that you just don't want to show in relationship. Now, it's important to know that being emotionally unavailable is actually a trauma response, right? When you're shut off from your emotions and you have difficulty opening up for others, or even knowing what your emotions are and labeling them, is actually just a byproduct of experiencing situations where you felt overwhelmed and couldn't handle them when you were early young, which is also known as CPTSD, or a trauma response, disassociation. And you're kind of cutting yourself off from that emotional experience in order to feel safe in the moment, but you're not actually safe, right? You're actually just cut off from what's going on, but it keeps you safe, and it's kind of a protective mechanism. Now, this was a learned response that I had from past traumas, from past relationships, earliest relationships. That's how, we operated. I didn't know any different, and it was modeled to me by my parents, right? Who I also see are not as in touch with their emotions that I would like myself to be and hold myself to a standard to now. And, if I ever had an extreme emotion as a child, rather than help through it, because my little body was still learning about emotions and all those things, rather than kind of help through it, I was just sent to my room, right? Or shut away, or kind of held by a parent and just told, it'll be okay, stop feeling this way, stop crying going da 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 da, all these things to shut down my emotions, right? So I actually needed to be helped to process that emotion in a healthy way, in a healing container, and my childhood just wasn't the place to do that. I've learned how to do that now as an adult. So when you actually move into a healthy relationship and you experience those strong emotions, that's actually what is healthy intimacy. If one partner has a strong emotion, there is that co-regulation that happens there to help you to get back to internal physical safety as well, right? That is real intimacy, into me, you see. But as we know from attachment theory, we are attracted to what's familiar, and often we find ourselves in relationships with people that are emotionally unavailable if we have a childhood like that, and we have this kind of deeper fear of abandonment. So we're kind of actually self-abandoning in order to stay in those relationships. And if you want to know what self-abandonment is, watch this video next. And if emotional unavailability was a common dynamic in your childhood, you will be drawn to that kind of dynamic when you're an adult, all right? This kind of pattern where we do continually get drawn to partners that can't meet our needs, that don't meet our emotional kind of worth, and this pattern that starts in childhood of experiencing, a climate where our emotions aren't safe to be felt, and where we're effectively kind of told that what we're feeling is wrong, and then it happens again in our adulthood where we're with partners who just completely reject us when we have needs or we have strong emotions that come up. This creates a self-narrative that there's something wrong with us, that I'm not worthy of love, or that I'm not good enough, right? And that narrative continues. Now I'm going to go through some specific signs that will show that you might be emotionally unavailable, but before I do, if you want to know more about my story and how I healed this, I want you to head to my webinar, The Proven 3 Steps to Self-Love After a Toxic Relationship Ends, where I unpack and go through my exact process in healing my emotional unavailability. You can sign up below to reserve your seat. So the first sign that you might be emotionally unavailable or have some unavailability in you is that there are patterns that reoccur in your life, like a relationship always ends after 2 years, or you keep forcing a relationship with someone who turns out they're unavailable themselves, like they're ambivalent about you, or they're just not sure, or they're not ready for anything serious, whatever it might be. And these relationships tend to crash and burn at some point, right? You just get completely overwhelmed and frustrated. They might ghost you. You just feel like you turn into a nervous wreck, and it just becomes really toxic and nasty. Or a pattern where you might feel like you have the same relationship over again and again, but just with a different partner in the place. And you might feel like you go on autopilot in relationship, right? You're operating from your subconscious love blueprint out of your awareness, and you're just kind of like, you're just doing things without really being conscious of it. And when your own poor behavior comes out, it clashes with the poor behavior of your other partner, because neither of you are really conscious about what your triggers are and what your wounding is. Instead of all of that, we want to build a conscious relationship where we're co-creating and we really own the parts of us that, are unavailable, and the parts of us that can kind of get in the way of intimacy. We take awareness for all of them and we show up as ourselves. We take responsibility for them, and we also allow ourselves to be flawed, because no one is perfect and no relationship is perfect as well, right? So we don't want to let them run unchecked. We actually want to become conscious of them. But if you've got patterns like this, there's a high chance that there is unavailability operating in you as well. The second sign is that you find yourself often in victim mindset, right? You're hyper focused on the other person as the problem. This is something I got stuck in for a long time, and I see a lot of women get stuck in this, right? You blame your ex-partner. You're the victim, they're the problem. Now, I don't want to take away from the very fact that we do need to call it when someone is being abusive, whether it's emotionally or physical, whatever it might be, we are a victim in that sense. But if we get hyper-focused and stuck in this narrative that it had absolutely nothing to do with us, and it's just all about their flaws, and you might even find yourself going down the rabbit hole of, he's a narcissist, and finding all the signs, and that can be really detrimental to taking responsibility for our role in involvement in it. Again, I'm not taking away from the importance of you labeling something correctly and taking acknowledgement for the fact that you were victimized in some way, but getting stuck in it can be a pattern of emotional unavailability because you're not taking responsibility for that in yourself. So you might just go straight back onto apps, dating and swiping. You might be leapfrogging from one relationship to the next without taking a break in between, and you're not taking responsibility for your contribution to the way the relationship ends. happens, right? You just kind of ignore it and move on to the next. And you don't realize that you yourself have a filter that is actually only really interested in and is giving space to others that are emotionally unavailable. They might just look exciting or really attractive or, a little bit unavailable. Who knows? You might not even realize that there's any of that going on and they just happen to be the ones you're attracted to. But you're letting them in, that filter is letting them in, and you're getting triggered and hooked into that pattern of familiarity. And that is what's keeping you in it. And you don't ever acknowledge and recognize what's going on inside of you, right? You're in your head about it. You don't have a lot of feeling around it. You're really more focused on the kind of like cognitive aspects of the bond. Now, the third sign you might be emotionally unavailable in some areas is that you focus on appearance, how you appear to others. You are trying to do the right things or say the right things, and you really focus on and pay attention to what they like, what they do, what they say. You might go and read the books that they like. You might listen to the music they like. And you want to kind of like make yourself like a chameleon into their life, right? You kind of like completely axe off who you are and your interests and all those things in order to connect with them. And you might get stuck here on YouTube looking for advice about what text to send him to get him interested, or all those tips on like how to do the right thing and say the right thing that of course are completely inauthentic to you, right? And they're designed to get you kind of being someone that you're not in order to get in connection. And that focus on appearance shows that you don't have that deeper connection emotionally to what is authentic and what is right for you, right? You're showing up in that way and waiting for someone to accept in that sense that kind of false self, whereas what you should be doing is just completely waiting and allowing people that come in that see you for who you fully are and being authentic in yourself and really standing up for your own values and standards in that, when you show who you are, that is what will attract the right people, and anyone else is just not worthy of your time. Intimacy issues can come from this kind of focus on the external, focus on how you appear to others. And, it's because you weren't seen and heard as a child when you were young. So you kind of learned to put on a bit of a mask or a personality from that early age in order to create pretend intimacy with your caregivers. And that translates into your adult relationships. And it results in us not feeling comfortable with sharing intimate details of our lives to our partner or to our friends, right? There's a part of us that we kind of keep hidden and we think that that's normal, but it's actually us being less emotionally available than we should if we want healthy intimacy. Another sign that you might have some emotional unavailability can be in your friendships. And please take this with a grain of salt. And that is if you tend to have friendships around you that are very high superficial level, right? They're more acquaintances than friendships. You actually don't have anyone that you speak to in depth, intimately about what's going on, like daily or whatever it might be. Now, take this with a grain of salt. This may or may not be the case for you, because I'm someone who doesn't want to have a whole lot of friends. I love having a couple of close friendships where I can go really deep, and that's where I put my time and energy to. And that works for me, and I'm emotionally available in those friendships. But in your friendships, if you find that you always find a reason to keep space between you and your friends, that you just don't open up, and you actually prefer your own solitude and isolation, and you kind of feel a little bit numb inside when you're with others because you're not in touch with yourself, that's another sign that there might be some emotional unavailability there. So, like I said, I'm going to show you now how to heal your emotional unavailability, and this is how I worked on my own as well. There are 3 steps to healing this, and I like the number 3. 3 is a really good kind of takeaway for you to leave this video and start implementing some things yourself. Step 1, I want you to get really honest about your patterns. If anything I've spoken about today in this video has rung true for you, please get honest about them. Just write them down on a piece of paper, acknowledge them. Identify the emotion underneath that you're kind of avoiding in doing that, right? When we kind of act from this false superficial self, there's always an underlying feeling that's going on. And for me, for the longest time, it was real loneliness and lack of feeling of belonging. And, I didn't want to acknowledge that with myself because I felt shame about that. I thought it was because of me. And please don't. This is actually just a maladaptation you've learned from childhood. But the first step to learning how to heal it is acknowledging it. So it could be loneliness, shame from the past, a belief that you're just not good enough or not worthy of love. You might also have a really strong inner critic. You might be beating yourself up internally. The first step to knowing any of this is to get aware and really notice it. And then the second thing you're going to do in this step is you're actually going to write it down. Now, when I was first told to do this, I was just like, why would I write this stuff down and feel so ashamed about it, right? It's going to make it worse. I'm going to feel it more by writing it down. No, that's not what's going to happen. What will happen is by writing it down, you are externalizing it. You're bringing it outside of your body onto the piece of paper in front of you, and it's actually creating a separation between who you are and the maladaptive part of you that's trying to keep a safety barrier between you and other people, because you are not your maladaptive self. This is just a part of you that is formed through the set of circumstances that I've mentioned from childhood and then moving into adulthood, and this is a part of you that you can actually work with and heal your relationship with them, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. But the first thing we need to do is we need to extract that part from you and your higher self. And the easiest way to do that, honestly, is just simply journaling. And I like to keep a piece of paper near me when I have a really strong internal part that's speaking out that I know is not actually, the true me. It's a false part of me. And I like to write them down, because as soon as I write it down, I see it externally and I'm like, wow, look at that. That's what that part of me is telling me today. And you can kind of choose to not buy into it because it's on the external, so to speak. The second thing you're going to do to heal your emotional unavailability is you're going to start to learn how to be vulnerable with yourself, right? Which you've already started to do because you're externalizing these voices and these parts of you inside, but you're going to learn how to do that in connection with another person, because connection is incredibly healing. This part of us has formed because we've been isolated and we've been on our own, and we require the presence of another person to witness us and witness all of our internal states in order for us to feel healed and feel worthy and accepted. The power of someone else just listening while you speak about these parts that are shameful that you've never spoken to anyone about is incredibly powerful. So you might choose a coach or a therapist or a mentor or even a safe friend if you've got one. Just learn or start learning how to open up and tell deeper truths that you've been keeping locked inside for so long. Share your emotional state, even if it's really volatile. If you're really upset one day, challenge yourself and reach out to a friend. I struggled with this for the longest time, reaching out to someone else when I was not my best self, right? When I couldn't mask up because I was just in such a state, right? Even if you just need to text them at the start or send them a voicemail just to let them know, because hooking that line in and getting that connection when you're really vulnerable is incredibly healing, and you start to feel in your body that's actually okay for you to open up and be safe around others. Okay, you cannot do this alone, and eventually it will feel less scary. And of course, you do need to be discerning around the people you open up with as well. So start with a really safe space. A therapist or a coach or a trusted friend is a really great start. Step 3 is to learn how to start feeling safe in your body when you're experiencing strong emotions, when you're in this kind of like trauma response. Because back in our childhood, we had these big emotions come up and we learned how to kind of shut them down because we just couldn't handle them. Our little bodies could not process those emotions. And if we didn't have a parent there guiding us through it, learning how to breathe, how to feel safe, co-regulating together, if we did it all on our own, it was very, very scary. So we kind of shut them down and feel really unsafe in doing so. So as we start to get more in touch with our emotions, we need to learn safety in the body at the same time. So learn how to self-soothe, to feel when you feel your emotions, to learn to soothe at the same time. And this might just look like having a warm bath every time you're experiencing something strong, or even when you're not, or learning meditation, learning how to hold your body, right? Doing a self-hug, or just learning breathing techniques that really lower your heart rate and allow yourself to go into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest when you're feeling safe. We have a window of tolerance. This is a term that therapists and psychologists use, which is our ability to, process and hold emotions without getting completely overwhelmed and potentially re-traumatizing ourselves. Chances are your window might be quite small at this moment because we haven't learned the skills to process stronger emotions and bigger emotions. As you learn to feel more and more safe in your body, you will learn to expand your window of tolerance, and as bigger, more uncomfortable emotions come up, you'll find that you can still be safe in your body while you're doing that. So at every turn, when it comes to feeling our emotions that we've never done before, we've got to remind our body that we're actually not in danger, because our body thinks these strong emotions is the equivalent of the tiger in the bushes and we're about to die, okay? That's the level that our body hasn't felt safe, just because we haven't learned some basic self-soothing skills that we needed to learn when we were in childhood. Now, there's one thing that might hinder your progress in taking these 3 steps to heal your emotional unavailability, and that is if you have a really strong abandonment wound. And an abandonment wound is a real deep fear of abandonment. It comes from experiencing a lot of abandonment in your life, and this might hinder you. So if this is something that you suspect you might have, I really want you to watch this video on what your abandonment wound is and how to start healing it, because I give you specific healing steps there. And if you'd like more information about the 3 steps that I use to move to self-love after my toxic relationships end, I have a webinar that I'd love for you to watch. You can click the description below and join up there. I also have a free Facebook group. I'd love to see you in there. I do lives every week, and it's a really fun place to hang out. And if you'd like to submit your application for Heal Your Heart School, you can click the calendar link in the description below. And please comment below with any questions or comments you have from this video. I will be in the comments, and click the like button as well, because it will really help this video and this channel out to get momentum. Here are some next step videos for you to watch to move one step closer to having an incredible relationship with yourself in your life and being your true authentic self. And for now, I will see you in the next video.